Hello and welcome to the 40th episode of the Kinetic podcast, which is quite mad because this time last year I was not remotely thinking I would have a podcast soon. I just decided that I'm better at talking than I am writing. I find trying to explain things on social media, you have such a short window to get someone's attention and tell them something. And because I am not a clickbaity person, I want to actually tell you how to do things. It's really difficult to make that work on social media. So I thought, cool, let's do a podcast and let's talk to everybody this way. And here I am. I committed to one a week as a minimum, and I have stuck to that. And there have been some weeks where two have gone out. So really, really pleased. And thank you to everyone who's listened so far, because every time that I see that it's been streamed throughout the week, it's just, yeah, it's really, really good to see. And hopefully it's really helping everybody as well. So today's episode is about the scales and the difference between losing body fat and losing weight. So I'm going to start with a client story. Now, I was working one-to-one with this client, and this one check-in, we'd been working together for, I'm going to say about 3 months at this point. She'd been on holidays. She was really busy. She's a mum of a young child, and she had a lot going on, but she'd made so many improvements. She'd improved her diet. She was more active. She was more conscious of what she was eating, of drinking water. She was in a gym routine. So textbook going really well. But then this one check-in, she listed all of these things to me, how she's finding it much easier to eat better. She's drinking less alcohol, drinking more water, feeling amazing, clothes feel good. She liked what she saw in the mirror. We'd done her pictures and measurements for progress markers, and we could see a difference. Everything's great, right? And then she stepped on the scales, and they hadn't changed. In fact, actually, they'd gone up a pound. I tell a lie, they'd gone up a pound. And she was like, so it's obviously not working. And just that one thing of standing on the scales just wiped out all of those positive factors that we had, because the scales at that moment didn't reflect it. Now, obviously, we had a big chat about it and we worked out what was going on, and that we continued to weigh then for another week just so that she could see the fluctuations. And I'm going to go into that in a second. And she then understood it all and realized that it wasn't a true reflection of losing body fat. And we'd never really used the scales as a main measurement. So we hadn't really overly gone into the factors around the scales and the ways that they're not a true reflection. So we talked a lot about it, and then she was like, okay, yeah. And I reminded her of this massive list of positives that she had just reeled off to me. And we carried on as we were, because obviously it was working, because there was all of those positives. And yeah, she weighed herself for a week every morning just so that she could see the differences. And each day she would tell me what it was, and we'd look at, okay, well, you did X yesterday, or you had drank more water, or you have food volume because you haven't been to the toilet, whatever it might be. And we talked through it all so she could understand the scale's role in her progress markers. So it really got me thinking about how so she'd been weighing herself without me realizing, because it wasn't something we tracked. And it got me thinking that maybe other clients do that. So I then, talked to quite a few of my one-to-ones to make sure if that was the case with anybody else. And there was one other client who, similar, again, could see all this progress that she was making. She felt amazing. She had all this energy. She'd improved her diet, all of those things. But yeah, the scales just weren't reflecting it. So there was just almost like this constant black cloud over all of these positive impacts. And so that's why I want to talk about it. So let's look at why we have fluctuations. And to understand that, you need to understand that losing body fat is different to losing body weight. So your body weight is affected by different things to your body fat. So weight loss is affected by, or weight gain is affected by things like water. So water retention from salt, for example. Water from, if you are drinking more water than you normally do and you're holding on to some because you've just drank it. so again, a full bladder, then obviously that is going to weigh something. If you eat carbohydrates, then there are 3 to 4 grams of water per gram of glycogen, which is a stored carbohydrate essentially. There are 3 to 4 grams of water stored with every gram of glycogen. Now you might think, well, so why are we doing that then? Because, obviously that's making us put on weight. But it's not. It's a process that your body goes through, and it's part of, like, carbohydrates are your body's preferred source of energy. They are easy to turn into energy, easy to use when they need to. So it's something that we need to do, and it doesn't mean that it's unhealthy, and it doesn't mean that it's adding body fat, because like I say, this is body weight, not body fat, and they are different. Also, things like food volume. So if you have food in your stomach being digested, it weighs something. If you're on your period, you will have water retention most likely, and your hormone fluctuations will affect that. And that again weighs something in your body. If you have exercised, then so post workout, then you've got things such as, that's a very strange note that I've made there. So yeah, if you've just worked out, you've got some water retention from your inflammation. So when you essentially break down muscle tissues when you are training, so that you can then go and build them up, and that's how growth happens on a very basic level. So the water retention is part of the inflammation and the recovery process of your muscles. It is very normal. So like that post-workout pump, part of that is water retention from inflammation from the wounds you have created in those muscles. Very normal, but again, there's water retention. It will weigh something. If you do strength training, then muscles are more dense than fat. So they take up less space, but they weigh more. So if you are watching this on video, a pound of fat maybe is that big. No, other way around. A pound of muscle maybe is that big. A pound of fat is that big. So they weigh the same, but they take up different amounts of space. So a muscle will take up less space, therefore you will appear smaller, but the weight is still the same. It's just about how much space muscle versus fat takes up in your body. So you, as somebody who is quite lean, you might weigh more than it would appear. And if you put somebody who regularly strength trains, who weighs 70 kilograms, next to somebody who doesn't do any strength training and weighs 70 kilograms, they will look completely different, even if they are the same height. So it's important to understand all of these things. If you so think about your fiber in your diet, think about your bowel contents. So if you are eating plenty of fiber, the right amount of fiber like you should be, then again, that is a process going on in your body. Your bowel contents will be different day to day, throughout the day, what time of day. So again, something that takes up some space and weighs something in your body. And medications. So let's use steroids as an example. They can bring about, we'll go with bring about. They can bring about water retention, and they can also affect your hunger hormones. So although, you might weigh more because you might eat more from medication, but again, that medication comes under fat loss as well. So I'll touch back on that in a second. But from a body weight, those things all affect your body weight, but they are not indicative of if you are losing or gaining body fat. So let's look at body fat. So fat loss comes down to whatever else is going on. There are lots of things that affect you losing or gaining weight and body fat. But the basic mechanism is calories in, calories out. Lots of other things will affect your calories in, calories out, but the baseline mechanism for fat loss is that you need to expend more calories than you take in. Hence why a very simplistic form of eat less, move more, because essentially you could argue that's what calories in, calories out is saying, but it is not that simple. There are so many other things that impact the calories in, calories out equation. But yeah, that is the baseline mechanism, is that you need to expend more calories than you take on if you want to lose fat. If you expend the same amount of calories as you take on, you will maintain and you will stay the same weight and the same level of body fat. And if you expend less than you take on, you will gain weight. So a few things that affect fat loss. You need to think about your height. So your height will impact your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, which is the amount of calories you burn just to survive. Now, when we talk about burning calories, remember that calories are a unit of energy. So how much energy does your body use just for you to survive? If you just lay down all day, how many calories would be burnt up as energy for your bodily processes for you to survive? That is the basic of a BMR, your basal metabolic rate. Now, anything above that is your calories expended. And they come in lots of different things that I'm going to look at now. So your thermic effect of food. Now, you don't need to overthink this, but certain foods use more energy, so more calories, to be digested. For example, protein. This is why protein is more satiating, so it keeps you feeling fuller for longer, because the digestive process takes longer. And then it takes longer for them to be digested, absorbed, and to metabolize and be used for their processes within the body. Don't overthink that. It's minimal. I don't know the exact number, but it is minimal. I did have it somewhere and I haven't added it to my notes for some reason, but yeah, it's a very minimal difference. Excuse me. Look at your hormones, your thyroid, for example. If you have hypothyroidism, then you're going to have a slower metabolism. So if you are low on thyroid, now obviously you can get medication for this, but that's the effect of being low in your thyroid hormone. Your metabolism is slower. And if you have raised levels of thyroxine, a thyroid hormone, then you have an increased metabolism. And then you can look at estrogen. So estrogen affects your fat distribution. So it will cause more fat. So perimenopausal and menopausal, you will store, in most cases, you will store more fat around your abdominal region. That's just estrogen's little, like a leaving parting gift, I suppose. So yeah, it just affects where the fat is stored. It doesn't inherently mean that you store more fat. It just means that you store more fat there. Strength training, as I said before, has an impact, but also strength training, you are building and preserving muscle, and muscle is metabolically active tissue. So the higher level of muscle you have in your body, the higher your BMR, that basal metabolic rate that I talked about before. And also, your muscles are a site for the biggest site of glucose storage. So taking the sugars from your blood, and they will be stored in your muscle tissue. That is one for another day. Yeah, I don't think that really, not important on this one, not important for fat loss. What else is there? NEAT. So non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So the fidgeter calories, essentially. Now, there was a study done on a set of twins where everything was like for like. So they were calorie controlled, they were exercise controlled, everything. It was like a really tightly controlled study where everything else matched. But when they looked at the results at the end, one of the twins had lost more weight. So they were like, okay, what's happening here? And it was because he's a fidgeter. So his non-exercise, so not planned movements, things like when you're sat there, and I talk with my hands quite often, this burns calories. Now, nobody needs to be walking down the street. Like if you're watching it on video, don't be doing this, although I've got blurry hands on my video actually. The point of it is that it's unintentional. It's just the things that you do, whether it's like people who are toe tappers, or people who shake their, you see like people shaking their leg while they're sat, things like that. Like just the kind of the non-exercise movements and the unintentional movements, they add up. A bit like the thermic effect of food, is not something to overthink because the point is that it's unintentional, but it's just a factor for you to know that it exists and it does have an impact. Sleep is very, very important when it comes to fat loss for lots of different reasons. So it will, if you don't sleep well, your hunger hormones will be disrupted. We've all done it where we've had a bad night's sleep and the next day you just want to eat everything in sight. And that's not always something we can control. Like if you've got young children, it's really hard. But again, the awareness, understanding that it has an impact means that you can go, actually, I know that I'm not hungry. I know that it's just because I didn't sleep well last night. So I'm going to have that orange or whatever, or some water or whatever, or I'm going to busy myself because I know that I'm just thinking about food because I'm sat here thinking about how tired I am or whatever it might be. So it's just having that awareness that it has the impact. Sleep also affects fat loss because if you are tired, you are going to be less active. You're not going to be getting up and going to the gym or getting up and going for that walk or running around doing things. Everything will be a bit slower when you're tired. So again, it's just understanding all the impacts. And then medication, as I talked about before, so it can increase or decrease your appetite. Again, this is sometimes just play a bit of a where they interact with your hunger hormones, and having that awareness makes you question it and go, okay, but am I actually hungry? What have I eaten today? Have I drank enough water? Have I been particularly active? And understanding, getting used to your body's cues and just like knowing how to read your body and what it really needs. Not something that happens overnight, but a really good place to get to if you can. Medications can affect your sleep. So again, going back to what we just talked about, it can affect your pain rates. So this can be positive and negative. So it can make you, it can sort of mask your pain or deal with your pain or reduce inflammation. That can be good and bad. So it might mask your pain and make you think that you can do things that actually maybe you shouldn't have done. Let's say you've got, I don't know, a sprained ankle or something, and then you take some anti-inflammatories and you feel amazing, so you go for a walk, but then you're laid up for 3 days. Or it can be that you've only got a small injury or issue, and the medication then means that you can get up and move. So it can have a positive or negative effect. But the fact is that it's not the medication isn't causing you to gain body fat or to store body fat. It's affecting your behaviors. And I think that things like this are overcomplicated and used as marketing tools all the time on social media, on the internet, wherever. And, it will be used as, if you gained weight because you were on steroids, here's what you need to do. And it's like, well, no, that's not what you need to do. Because generally what you need to do is take this pill and pay me a lot of money. And it's not that. You need to be understanding the effect that the medications are having on your body and on your behaviors, and then adapt your lifestyle to them and almost take back the control of your behaviors, because when you understand them, you can challenge them and you can change them. So it's, again, not things to wildly kind of obsess over, but just to understand the impact they have, and knowing the difference between losing body fat and losing weight and the things that actually are affecting your scales but not your body weight. I mean, on a short-term basis, the scales will go up whilst you lose body fat. That is definitely possible. It's just because there's so many of these weight loss factors that are not body fat factors. So yeah, we just need to understand the difference. So people will say to me, do you not recommend the scales then? And it just isn't a black and white answer. It's individual. So let's look at some positives of the scales. If you have a fair amount of body fat to lose, you are going to see a downward trend over time if you are putting in the right behaviors. So if you had, let's say, 3 stone that you wanted to lose, and the scales aren't going down, then you are not in a calorie deficit, and because you will see a difference. If, let's say, that you were eating well for your calorie deficit, moving well for a calorie deficit, but after a month of doing that consistently, and doing what you should be doing consistently for a month and the scale hadn't gone down, you're not in a calorie deficit and you'd need to relook at your targets. Either you're not moving enough or you're eating too much and your calorie target isn't right. And as I say, that makes it sound really simplistic. That is the baseline, but we would then look at why. What is affecting those things? Why are you not moving enough? Why are you eating too much? What's going on and how do we change it? Are you actually nailing your target, but the target isn't right? So yeah, if you have a lot of body fat to lose, you will see a downward trend on the scale over time. And yes, it is a progress marker when you understand it properly, but it needs to not be used on its own. There always needs to be other progress markers alongside the scales. So things like how your clothes feel, how you view yourself in the mirror, pictures, body measurements using like a fabric tape. How's your performance in the gym? Are you sleeping better? How's your energy levels? Like all of those kind of things. How's your relationship to food in terms of, how do you feel around eating? How do you feel around yourself and your own body image? So you need to put it with lots of other different things as well. And you need to understand the fluctuations. And it can be a positive in that sense. For some clients, I have said you're going to weigh yourself every day this month because it will help them understand the fluctuations. For another client, that would be the worst thing I could get them to do because they'd become obsessive with it and it would impact their behaviors daily in a very extreme way. They would either go, oh my God, I put weight on today. That's it. I'm not eating today. I'm not restricting and I need to do like 5,000 steps more than I normally do. And it would be a really detrimental thing to do. But for other clients, it would really help them to understand the scales and maybe to then step away from them when they don't really have much of a body fat target anymore. So that's kind of the positives. From the negative impact of the scales, it just doesn't account for lots of different things. It's a very small marker of a big progress picture, and it's not reflective of your muscle to fat ratio. So I have always been, as long as I can remember, been heavier than I look. My BMI was overweight when I was younger, but I was in like size 8 to 10. I was small, but I was muscly. I played sports. I went to the gym. I was really healthy. So yeah, it's not reflective of that. So it can be quite damaging in that respect if you are training and doing all the right things, but the scales are telling you you're not doing well. So it can be quite demotivating. And it can overtake, as I said earlier with that client example, it can overtake all of the positive impact and all the positive progress markers that you see. It can just wipe them out in one small sweep of 1 pound gained or 0 pounds lost. And the scales have just been oversold to us as being like so important, and certain weight loss clubs who rely on the scales way too much don't help that at all. It's one of my biggest issues with them. There are certain elements of those slimming clubs, not naming any names. There are certain elements that are good, that they are science backed and they work, but there is just way too much importance on the scales and a sense of, oh, you gained a pound this week, hun. What did you do wrong? It just isn't sustainable. And there are 7 p.m. weigh-ins. Well, how is anybody basing their progress on that? You've got no hope. What if you went out for lunch that day? Or what if last week you hadn't been well? And if you'd have been weighed last week, it would have shown this great thing. And then this week, because you've weighed it, or maybe last week you weighed at 9 a.m. and this week you've weighed at 7 p.m. And they're just totally different markers. They're not reflective enough of your actual progress. And then the biggest negative impact is the link between a scale number and our worth as a person and the obsessive behaviors that come with it. You are worth so much more than whatever that scale number says. And there always needs to be other progress markers, like I say, and other ways for you to value yourself and for you to measure progress and decide whether you are healthy or not, other than the scales. There are much, much better ways. Now, if I had to give a black and white answer of should scales be used or not, then I would have to say no, because for a lot of my clients, no, they shouldn't be. But I don't have to give a black and white answer, and there are scenarios where they're helpful. So there's always a grey area, isn't there? So yeah, should you or should you not use scales? Like I say, it's really individual. You just need to make sure that you don't use it as your only tracker of progress. There's scenarios such as pregnancy, or if you're trying to make a weight class for a sport or a competition, then a sports competition, not like I'm not a fan of certain other weight cutting competitions. You need to know when to do it and understand the fluctuations that come with it. So if you are going to be weighing yourself, it needs to be first thing when you wake up in the morning, before you drink anything, before you eat anything, and after you go to the toilet, and get naked, strip off and get on them scales. Needs to be first thing. And you need to do that consistently. Don't then be like, oh yeah, this week I put on, but I did drink 2 coffees and half a bottle of water before I weighed myself because I didn't remember till 11. Like, it's pointless. If you don't get it done first thing, just don't do it, because it will undoubtedly mess with your head. Make sure you're always a little bit stepped back from it if you are going to do it. Don't go on there with the view of this is going to determine how my day is or who I am as a person or how much I value myself. Or keep stepped back. It's just one little number in the bigger picture. And yeah, just understand that if you have obsessive tendencies, it probably isn't a good thing, because if you don't have obsessive tendencies, then weighing yourself daily is a good idea to understand the fluctuations and see the trends. But if you do, then it is very much not a good idea. Much like calorie tracking. There are some clients that I would never in a million years have calorie tracking. And there are other clients where it works really well to help them understand the quality of their food and where they get their nutrients from and how to hit the protein target that they need and things like that. So it is individual. If you need some help putting it all together and trying to work out whether you should or shouldn't be using the scales and whether you should or shouldn't be losing fat or whatever's going on that you're not sure of, I'll put a link in the show notes to message me on WhatsApp. And also the next intake of the Bricks Method, Early Bird, will open next week. There are only 10 spaces at the Early Bird price, and there are only 20 spaces total this time around. So the program starts on 31st of March. Doors open next week. As I say, 10 early bird spaces. After that, they're gone. I will put all the details in the show notes so you can listen to episode 31, which will tell you more about the program. It's a 6-week program, but not a quick fix. It's not about how much weight can we lose or what can we achieve in terms of weight loss and strength gain in 6 weeks. Yes, those things might happen, but I want you to learn everything you can in 6 weeks to take that forward and to build some habits and routines, understand your behaviors, dig a little bit deep to work out why you do certain things, and then rebuild. So the bricks are, we're going to lay some foundations to build bricks on, because you need to have solid foundations if you are changing your diet, your lifestyle. You've got to have solid foundations, because some days are really hard. Sometimes life like sucker punches you in the face and you need to know what to do. And you need to know how to get through that without hitting the effort button or face planting some Ben and Jerry's. Nothing against Ben and Jerry's, but let's not have it as our first coping mechanism. So yeah, I will put all the details of that in the show notes. It's my signature program. It's my most popular program, and I'm incredibly proud of the program and the results it has produced and the difference it has made to people. Things like the actually loving their body for the first time, or on the last round, it was somebody said they are more friends with their body than they ever have been. We had people buying a swimsuit that they'd never bought, they'd never worn a swimsuit. So there was others that, people had unexpectedly lost weight and couldn't believe it when they actually weighed themselves at the end of the 6 weeks, because it's not a progress tracker that I ask anybody to use. They were eating more fruit and veg. They had more energy. It was just, yeah, I am buzzing. I absolutely love this program. So the Bricks Method, 31st of March, details will be in the show notes. We would love to have you there. It's not just about fat loss. It is about strength, confidence, mindset, resilience. I have a lot of ladies on there who are perimenopausal or menopausal, and we navigate that whole minefield and how it impacts us trying to improve our health. So yeah, I would love to have you there if you've got some goals that you're working on and you need some direction. So pop me a message in the show notes, listen to episode 31. Oh, 31, and it's the 31st of March that it starts. How unimportant. Anyway, thanks for listening.